So The Shadow, issue one by Dynamite. This is another series I've been looking forward to. I'm a huge fan of The Shadow. For anyone who doesn't know The Shadow came out in 1930. He was the host of this radio drama called Detective Story Hour, and he was kind of like the narrator. People liked it so much that they began asking for The Shadow to have his own like detective magazine. So they created one based off The Shadow with Walter B. Gibson. Walter B. Gibson's the guy who fleshed out most of the Shadow character. And this came out in 1931. The Shadow then went on to have a very popular radio drama series, which I actually own all the episodes. I have them on my iPod that I listen to constantly. You can find them online. They're free now. They're in the public domain. So one of the sites you can get them from is Old Timey Radio. So yeah, there was a radio drama. There was comic strips, comic books, pulp novels, pulp serials. So the Shadow, we don't really know much about the Shadow's character. He's a guy that goes by many names. In the books, he's referred to as Kent Allard, but in the radio, films, and television, and the name that he's mostly known by, it's Lamont Cranston, and he's described as a wealthy young man about town. So basically, picture Bruce Wayne, and you kind of get the idea. In fact, speaking of Bruce Wayne, the Batman actually took a lot from the Shadow character, and I mean a lot. The very first Batman comic strip ever, like Batman's very first appearance, is nothing more than a ripoff of a Shadow novel, and even some of the panels in the Batman comics is basically traced from the Shadow. The Shadow's billionaire playboy alter ego is DC took that from the Shadow and used it for Bruce Wayne. He's an expert detective is also used for Batman. The Shadows even has like a nickname similar to the Dark Knight, and in the novels, he wears basically a cape. In the novel, he basically wears a cape, and the cape is described as like bat wings. So Batman kind of just basically took that description and made it literal bat wings. So yeah, there's a lot that Batman took from the Shadow. But yeah, Shadow was basically a series super popular in the 30s, and it had like everything: lunchboxes, board games, TV show, like every single piece of merchandise you can think of. The Shadow had it, and of course, over the years, I mean, the Shadows was like one of the most influential superheroes, or should I say, one of the most influential figures in the superhero world. And he's had his own like recent comic series here and there. There's a current Batman Shadow comic series that I should review one of these days. I don't want to say I hate it, but I'm not really a fan of the way they portrayed the Shadow in that series. So I am more than happy that they're giving the Shadow his own series. Well, Dynamite is giving the Shadow his own series, and I'm really looking forward to what they're going to do with it. Unlike other Shadow comics, this one actually isn't set in the 30s, but it's actually set in present day. So it'll be interesting to see how they pull this off. The artwork in this issue is fantastic, by the way. So most of this issue is dialogue. There's some action in the middle, but it's mostly dialogue. I'm usually not a fan of these kind of issues, but this one does a pretty good job of setting up the theme and the mystique of the Shadow. So we start off with this nurse, and she's changing bandages of her patient, and she's basically telling a story about how she met the Shadow, how she met him 10 years ago, back when she was in high school, and how one day two students at the high school went on a shooting spree. So basically we got a Columbine moment happening here. So we see them going around, they're just like murdering all these kids, and one of them finally notices the nurse and pulls a shotgun on her. She basically says these two shooters are nothing more than like thin-skinned little bitches, precious goddamn snowflakes. The worst thing that you can do to someone like this is to laugh at them. So we hear the Shadow's trademark laugh, and he shoots at the kids. He shoots the gun out of one of their hands, and he shoots the back of another kid. And then we finally see like the patient that she's talking to, and this dude that's basically covered head to toe in burns. God, that's got to be a nightmare. Like at this point, I would just want someone to pull the plug on me. I wouldn't want to live a life like this. I mean, to be in constant pain like this. Can you even heal from something like this? Or is this something that like you're basically going to live the rest of your life kind of stuck in a bed. I don't know. I'm sorry, I'm kind of rambling, but God, this is like a nightmare right here for me. But yeah, she kind of tells a story about how I've heard screams that'll tear your heart. I've heard babies' last breaths and the hissing of moms too broken to cry. But you know what? I never heard anything nearly so bad as that laugh. And she kind of tells a story about how he's been out there since the 30s, busting up gangsters, spying on people, and him with his trademark .45 semis and his blood scarf, and then how for the best part of a century nobody knows shit about who he is. And this is kind of a commentary about the Shadow in real life. How in the 30s, I mean, he was huge, but nowadays, like, no one knows anything about the Shadow. Like, you go to the average comic book reader and you ask, are you familiar with the Shadow? They'll have no idea they'll have no idea who you're talking about. And it's kind of sad, because like I said, the Shadow is like one of the coolest characters ever. He is literally one of my top favorite superheroes of all time. He's way up there on that list. I really wish that more people would know about him. The funny thing is that there's actually going to be a Shadow cartoon series, and the Shadow cartoon series actually looked really good. Like, it had an old school pulp comic design to it, and I heard it's actually supposed to be a little dark and serious. I don't know if it was going to be for kids, but if it was going to be kind of like Young Justice or Batman animated series, where it was gritty enough for adults to enjoy. But it never came to be, and that always makes me kind of sad. I really wish that Shadow would make a huge return. But yeah, she kind of just tells a story about how he was big in the 30s and how people seem to forgot about him and what he did. And I thought this was kind of funny. Like, she talks about how her sister used to read comic books like Batman, Captain America, Wonder Woman, and how those comics always used to make this nurse lady laugh, because all they did was break things. They hit people, they hurt people, but still they gotta be the good guys, right? Like role models. So what it is, they have these cute little loopholes. Maybe they'll do everything except killing. Or maybe the guys they fight, they're so exaggerated, it's okay. So nobody notices the good guys are just gangsters, doing all the violent shit our moms taught us was bad, but still pretending to be, heroes. But him, I think he knows what he is. I was like, oh, that's the perfect way to describe the Shadow. The Shadow is very no nonsense. The Shadow doesn't come up with any excuses for doing the things that he does. Like, he's not like Batman, where he's like making excuses for capturing all these villains and then never putting them down for good, but just throwing them in jail for them to escape and go back to killing people again. And then his excuse is, well, if we kill them, then we're going to be no better than him. Or like, if we kill them, then I become above the law and I am not above the law, kind of thing. The Shadow's like, nah, you commit a crime, I'm putting you down. As simple as that. And I know the Batman situation not as cut as dry as I just mentioned. I don't actually blame Batman or any of these other superheroes. I actually blame the government in the comic world for letting the situation get the way it is, because nothing is stopping the government, nothing is stopping the law from giving Joker the death sentence. That's all you gotta do. Batman goes out, captures the criminals, throws them in prison. Prison gives him the death sentence. There you go. Batman still is doing what he's doing without killing anybody. He's still not above the law. But justice is being served, and these criminals aren't going back out into the world and, causing more havoc. Of course, that's never going to happen, but... So yeah, I don't blame Batman or any of these superheroes, but I just thought this was a really good line, because it really did kind of put into perspective the difference between the Shadow and all these other quote-unquote heroes out there. But yeah, the Shadow, I mean, he blows the arm off of one of the kids, and here we go, I love this line. Powerlessness. That's your story. You were born to a privilege you neither deserve nor notice, and as the world improves for those beneath you, your empire erodes. You have no idea you began life on a pedestal, and so you invent your sad little story of alienation. But you are not alienated. You know this. You are not persecuted. What you truly rage against is your own mediocrity, and in your unimaginative floundering, the only remedy you can find to all that ails you is to make destruction into performance. And as for the other kid, he pulls out his gun. He says, nobody understands us. And the Shadow just point blank kills him. He's like, on the contrary, who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of man? I was like, oh yeah, That was one of the classic Shadow quotes. It was, "What evil looks in the hearts of man, the Shadow knows." And then the other one was, "The weed of crime bears bitter fruits. Crime does not pay. The Shadow knows." I freaking love the Shadow's lines. So yeah, he kills one of the kids, brutally injures and mentally fucks the other kid, and then he disappears with his evil laugh as the nurse watches on, and then the police arrive. Yeah, she kind of talks about how, like, after that moment she went through college, med school, all that stuff. I thought this was kind of interesting. Didn't feel a thing. You know what it's like to live your life knowing the defining moments already behind you? I thought that was kind of interesting because I mean, it's technically true. Like the defining moment of your life, I would say like surviving a high school shooting, like having a gun pointed in your face and surviving would be like the most defining moment in your life. And to have that happen to you as a teenager, it's like, what's the rest of your life? I mean, you got to go through like the rest of your life just like giving no fucks at that point. Where it's like, like I've already had the worst of the worst that can possibly happen. Like I've witnessed my fellow students being gunned down in front of me. I've seen kids, dying in front of me. I had a gun pointed in my face and I survived. Like there's nothing else that will like phase me at this point. That's gotta be like an interesting life. Like I'm really hoping that this character plays a bigger part because I'm interested in this character. Like I want to see how this, like that's an interesting personality, and I kind of want to see how this plays out. Like maybe she can be the new Margot Lane. For those who don't know, Margot Lane was kind of the Shadow's assistant. Like she helped him with like information as well as she kind of helped his alter ego whenever they were out in public. So yeah, maybe that can be like the role that she plays, especially since the actual Margot Lane will either be dead or like super old by this point in time. So she's about to leave when the patient grabs the bag and starts pulling on it. Like the patient like asks her, "Why are you telling me all this?" And she's like, "Seriously, you're still pretending?" And she talks about how last month the patient, he has no prints, no DNAs on record. They have no idea to tell how old he is. And she talked about how it took like a crap ton of drugs just to knock him out. And the whole time he was like attacking nurses and doctors while screaming, "Who knows? Who knows? I know." And then he does a laugh. And then she, as a matter of fact, "I know, mister. I know that laugh. Last time I heard it, I was staring down the barrel of a shotgun. And of the two, it's the laugh that gave me nightmares." And she tells her, "Your secret's safe with me, but you're him, aren't you?" And he says, "I don't remember." And that's how it ends. So yeah, the Shadow is a old man burned victim with amnesia. I'm not going to say I'm too happy with this decision, but you know what? No, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. This is a dumb decision. God damn it. Also looking forward to this issue too. I mean, I'm not going to give up on it. I love the Shadow too much, and I want to give this series a chance, so I'm going to give it a couple of issues, but fucking hell, man. You have like one of the coolest superheroes ever, and you turn him into a fucking burn victim with amnesia. Like, of all the things you can do, why are you going to do that? Why are you going to do my boy like that? Like, other than that, I mean, the art's good, the dialogue is good. The dialogue is really good. Like, holy shit, really, really good. Like, they nailed the Shadow character perfectly with the few dialogues that he had. And the nurse is a very interesting character that I'm looking forward to seeing more of. The whole burn victim thing was kind of stupid, but yeah, I mean, it's not like the comic has turned out too bad, I guess. I mean, it's not like they're shoving a bunch of unnecessary political. Oh,